As Youth Month draws to a close, let's reflect on how young people can be empowered through education. Now, this very month signifies the importance of education as the country also reflects on the 16th of June 1976 Youth Uprisings. Now, so how does the empowerment of young people using education look like, particularly in the context of 2022? Let's speak to Professor Puleng LenkaBula, who's Unisa's Vice-Chancellor. Prof, thank you so much for your time this evening. I'd like us just to, even before we get into this conversation, begin with your reaction. I'm sure you've seen a very disturbing story coming out of a tavern in the Eastern Cape. 20 young people have died, and today we're even talking about education.
Thank you very much. I'd like to express my condolences to the families that lost their children. I also want to state that 46 years after the rise or eruption of students contesting the violence of apartheid and in its expression in the educational system, it's very important at this point to emphasize the value of education, to align with the President Mandela's assertion that education is very important because it empowers children of farmers or mine workers to really ensuring that they become owners of productivity. Education is not only for allowing productive citizens, but it allows youth and young adults to express their voices, to shape the future that they want to participate in. And in the current context of the 4.0 industrialization, commonly known as the fourth industrial revolution, it's even more important that they do not have the critical learning skill or the learning skills, but they also ensure that they learn the digital systems, the digital skills that are necessary for participating in the future. One of the critical things that universities such as the University of South Africa does is to create opportunities for youth and young adults, not only to study at undergraduate levels, but also at postgraduate levels. And we try to ensure that we resource not only the country, the continent, and the global arena with this knowledge, but the role of the youth in particular has been expressed through our yearly program, the Young Academic Leadership Study that we have a partnership with, where we draw all students from the continent who learn about leadership, but who also try to ensure that they communicate and participate within their own communities before they get into the national, continental, and before they align themselves with the National Development Plan or Agenda 2063. And universities in the past have generally tried to be elitist environments that never saw the relationship between students' active participation and social participation. We have engaged scholarship. That is the lever that empowers students to ensure that they don't just learn in the classroom or in the laboratories, but they translate what they learn into transforming societies for the better. And I want to say this is in the spirit of the 1976 students.
And pardon me, Prof, for coming in there. There's something I'd like to touch on, which you talk about 4IR, and you talk about even some of the future opportunities that are available for them. But there's also been a concern that in some instances, education, when it comes to its system, is also not fit for purpose. And, resources are not allocated more proficiently to ensure that these young people get education that is fit for purpose. I wonder then, how does that begin to be a point that is addressed when it comes to these access to such opportunities?
I think for South Africa, that is not the case. The fact that universities such as Unisa has 47% of our students supported by the National Financial Aid System is a testament to the commitment to ensuring that we finance higher education. That doesn't mean there are not challenges. The issue around education is that education must resource people with critical skills that enable them to contend with whatever reality and to transfer what they would have learned. One of the challenges of apartheid and of the leaders of apartheid is that they wanted to channel people into specific labor responsibilities, and which were at the same time hierarchicalized, wherein certain ethnic groups were at the bottom and some were at the top. So the value of education becomes more important if it resources students, youth, and young adults with critical thought systems, logic, design systems that enable them, even if they change careers, to still be able to navigate the future. It is also important, though, as you rightly say, for those critical skills that allow them to creating employment or to being employed, that we also resource them to do so. And it is through this translation of knowledge and engaged scholarship that majority of youth and young adults are able to express themselves, but also to change careers, because we would have resourced them to be able to participating anywhere in the world around the talents and expertise that they would have drawn for themselves. And it is our responsibilities as university to ensure that we don't just produce students as graduates, that we resource them with critical skills that make them competitive, that also resource them with emotional intelligence, with the ability to transforming themselves. Yesterday, when we were in the graduations in Limpopo, some of the critical factors that I've said are quite important for youth and young adults in South Africa is to know at least 2 or 3 countries outside South Africa, around SADC region. It's to have a passport, is to have a learner's license or a driver's license in order to navigate proximity, is to be interested to using their devices, not just for selfies, but for ensuring that they can catapult themselves if they want to be entrepreneurs, communicators, inventors, because oftentimes we come to education as consumers, but we don't come to education to translating, innovating, inventing. And this is a call and an appeal that vice-chancellors such as myself are making to the university system to say, to resource youth and young adults who are competitive, who are globally aligned and in tune, who are willing to ensure that the digital systems does not leave them behind.
Yes.
It's important that we make the appeal that is not just for fun, it's also for optimizing opportunities that the 4IR is about. Let me give an example.
So, Prof, before you give, pardon me, Prof, pardon me for coming in there. Before you give the example, you talk about, the access to these gadgets. And one of the things that we've seen during the pandemic is that it has laid bare the inequalities. Some have said that, for example, they have to study from home and they do not have, the necessary support when it comes to, for example, Wi-Fi, data, even at some point, to be able to access some of these classes that they need to be able to access. So that also leaves them at a disadvantage, and thus sometimes not being able to take part in what you're talking about and even being part of this future workforce that we are also discussing tonight.
A university such as the University of South Africa is one example that must be a site of excellence and success that South Africa celebrates. What we do at the university, we definitely ensure that our students have devices. We provide our students with data so that they can participate in their digital encounter with ourselves. This is a decision we undertook because we want to ensure that as a comprehensive open distance e-learning university, that our students, anywhere where they are, they should not be disadvantaged by the economic environments from which they come. They must be enabled. So we're the one university that gives our students, for examination purposes, in the past to participate, but now we've realized it's not only necessary for examination purposes, it is important. Some may say you're creating any institution where you're giving data and you're giving, but to bridge the gap, the digital divide that you have referred to, it's important that you create mechanisms that are structural, that are substantive, that you don't just speak about people participating in the 4.0 industrialization or what is popularly known as the fourth industrial revolution. To do so, you also have to expose them to the skills of the future, such as drone systems, 3D printing, and others, to say, how then do I create opportunities for cohorts of students, of youth and young adults who can participate, not, as I stated, as consumers, but also to be inventive. And that's the area that Unisa is investing in, because we want our students at the end of their term or their studies, when they look for opportunities anywhere, they are not just knowledgeable in the disciplines that they've studied, but they are competent in the digital systems. And this is something that I think the quantities that we're also dealing with, when you're dealing with 400,000 students and you allow them to participate, to play, and to take advantage of these opportunities in order that they can impact on the NDP, on the Agenda 2063, on the aspirations of the 1976 students who were fighting for an education that is transformative. I think this is an important partnership that we as universities must constantly drive.
Indeed, Prof. And one of the things that also I'm sure you need to also look into as well is that in some instances, young people do have these skills, but certainly have no place where to exercise them, because we are seeing currently over 60% of young people are unemployed and some are still battling to get access to the world of work. So how do you then begin to ensure that you're also grooming those who can start their own businesses?
Yes, as I said, Unisa has engaged scholarship. Through our community engaged scholarship, the academics and our own students go to communities in order that they can engage in a variety of critical skills that are required in societies. Aware that 4 million of us, of youth and young adults in South Africa, are looking for jobs or are tired for looking for jobs. And therefore, as part of our contribution to ensuring that we translate education into resources that can enable youth and young adults to creating own employment, to participating in international opportunities, we do so. We also give opportunities for our own students to work within our universities as student workers, and to ensure that even as they practice, get workplace experience, that they share with others and alternate. And this is part of professionalization of youth and young adults. And this is part of acceding to the call of the 1976 students, but also acceding to the call of students such as Angela Davis and others in other environments who have tried to say education that is indifferent to the social conditions of which societies live in and students live in would not be beneficial. So we align ourselves with the progressive approaches to education that are not indifferent to the challenges. And 176,000 of our students at Unisa themselves come from economic margins, themselves are committed to ensuring that they don't just pursue education for them as individuals, but to ensure that they change their families, their communities, the country, the continent, its images and its inventive spirit that has always been throttled by colonial systems, by linguistics, or by systems of oppression that do not that negate that beauty. So I think we would like to ensure that not only just youth and young adults, but we are unapologetic also by training women.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's all we have time for. We do appreciate your time this evening. Thank you so much for that, as you talk about the importance of education through the lens of empowerment. That's Professor Puleng LenkaBula, Unisa Vice-Chancellor.